Have you ever wondered what lies behind a seemingly perfect relationship? What if the person you trust the most becomes your worst nightmare? Jordan Worth and Alex Skeel appeared to be a normal, loving couple, young, in love, and full of promise. But behind closed doors, their relationship was anything but ordinary. This is the chilling story of how love turned into a weapon and trust became a tool of torment. The tragic story of Jordan Worth, a seemingly perfect lady, exposes the ugly truth of domestic abuse. Data about people who have been victims of domestic abuse are not only hard to maintain, but almost impossible, as many individuals avoid asking for assistance out of shame. Some victims of abuse, brutality, or humiliation go unrecognized for years until something catastrophic occurs. Cases involving corpses are common, but in 2018, the story of a young Englishwoman named Jordan Worth made national headlines for a number of reasons. First, this delicate, seemingly angelic woman disproved the stereotype that abusive relationships are characterized by brutal dictators and abusers. Regarding males, it's because their physical strength is negligible. Secondly, prior to her sentencing, only males in Britain had been convicted of domestic abuse and coercive control, so she made history as the first woman to get a genuine jail term for these offenses. The idea that a young mother of two managed to escape a tragic fate is heartbreaking nevertheless. The father of her heirs, who was almost killed in torture, creates, if nothing else, confusion. Let us now examine the theoretical basis for such a scenario and the reasons why Worth selected Alex Skeel to remain silent despite the imminent threat of his life as he endured inhumane treatment. And if true crime keeps you hooked, subscribe and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when we drop our next case. Alexander was born into a comfortable, welcoming, and loving family on August 17, 1995, in the town of Kingston upon Hull. Although he and his identical twin brother had been eagerly anticipated for a long time, their unexpected preterm birth had the physicians quite worried. During their first several months on Earth, the boys were hospitalized in specialized rooms for very preterm infants. The youngsters quickly made a full recovery, nevertheless, because to the skilled physicians' efforts. Even though he was born prematurely, Alexander's sibling put on weight more quickly and showed almost no signs of being underweight by his first birthday. However, Alex's own strength was found to be lacking. As a result of hydrocephalus, an abnormal buildup of fluid in the brain, he was also disabled. Despite having health issues from birth, Alexander's cerebral development was unaffected, and he was physically similar to his classmates, even participating in school athletics. The Skeel parents adored their kids from the moment they were born, showered them with affection, and did all in their power to ensure that they had a decent education and a comfortable existence. Following their high school graduation, the two brothers enrolled in the esteemed Bedford College to pursue further education. Alexander was handsome and intelligent enough, make an effort to go to the gym on a regular basis, and have fun interacting with people of the opposite sex. Except that Alexander was much more reserved and devoted to his schoolwork than his outgoing brother. Jordan Worth was a young, stunning beauty who Alex met when they were both in college. She was very self-conscious about her beauty, shopped lavishly, and had a bustling social life. Many boys wanted Jordan, who was widely believed to be one of the most popular females in college. She also volunteered alongside her studies, helping to gather supplies for local shelters and collecting money. Animals and African children, famine victims. Worth went so far as to get many accolades for her humanitarian work. At first look, this girl seemed to be an actual embodiment of an angel. Gorgeous, clever, kind, and empathetic. At first glance, Alexander thought she was beautiful, but he later realized that she was very brilliant. Even Jordan, who is quite popular, would ignore him. But she was the one who really initiated their acquaintanceship, and he was the one who instantly appealed to her as well. Although he had more life experience with matters of the heart than with romantic relationships, she was his first love due to his modest abilities. In 2012, at the tender age of 17, the pair started dating. Plus, everything were going swimmingly at first. They were young, infatuated, and nearly inseparable. They spent all their time together. They were hailed as the most attractive pair in college, which was really nice for Jordan. They had an amazing first half of a year together, full of passion, admiration, and love. Attempting to surprise each other with nice things was their goal. At first glance, it seems like these two were destined to spend the rest of their lives together in blissful union. The young pair got an apartment and made the decision to live together quite fast. Their parents, who were supportive of the relationship by the way, gave them a lot of money while they were still students. Since she seemed to be a serious young lady with aspirations of becoming an art history teacher, Jordan was even warm to Alexander's grandparents, while also leaving a favorable impression on others around them. On the other hand, bad conduct started to improve with time. It all began with a little more control and became worse as the months passed in their relationship. She was rather insistent that her boyfriend document everything. She shamelessly searched his phone's inbox for personal messages and many on social media staged irrational jealousy situations. Because he was head over heels for her, Alexander made an effort to ignore her conduct. He continued to dismiss her concern for him even after she started picking out his wardrobe and insisted he wear nothing but her purchases.
She used to say things like, "Why'd you all sit around a table and eat dinner?" She'd say, "I don't really like the colour grey. I don't think you should wear the colour grey." "Oh, I don't like your hair like that. You should have your hair like this." "Oh, I don't like the shoes that you're wearing." But I never took it as a negative. It was just more or less like, it won't impress her, I won't wear it again, sort of thing.
A reduction in Jordan's social circle was an immediate and noticeable trend. She got to decide when he could see certain people and who he could cut ties with. His loved ones were also impacted by this separation, in addition to his classmates and friends. Their public and online personas as a happy, ideal couple persists because Alex never once complained to anybody. Even Jordan started to like the freedom she had. She secretly removed contacts from his phone, blacklisted his loved ones, and would even reply to his messages, often with derogatory language, in his stead. Relationships were tense when she deleted all email, leaving Alex in the dark about what had been said. Around the same time, Alex's parents began to notice that their son was acting distant and avoiding them. When they attempted to reach out to Jordan, he was visibly impolite. Whenever his mother managed to reach him, she admonished him to end his involvement with Jordan and told him he would regret it. But Alex, who was head over heels with her, stood up for her, saying she was just trying to be compassionate. Soon after, word got around the Skeel household that Jordan had coerced Alex into leaving athletics, dropping out of college, and taking a job. After that, she pilfered all of his money and blew it all on herself. The parents tried to communicate with Alex again. However, they were unable to persuade him to go from Jordan. Jordan did something vile during his 2013 coming-of-age party and got away with it. She went missing without telling anybody as she and her companions were partying at a rural hotel.
We had a great time, it was lovely. And then Alex messages at like midnight going, "She's gone, I don't know where she is."
I went into the toilet and I come out and she'd just disappeared. I didn't know where she'd gone. We were all just like looking around for about an hour.
And I just remember Alex saying, "I found her."
She was back inside the hotel, like reception area, and she's just laughing sort of thing. It was just all a bit weird. Your mum and dad are saying, "No, that's not right," and then you're sort of thinking, when it's just us two, it's not like that, so you're wrong.
Upon her return in the morning, she was visibly drunk. When he attempted to inquire about her whereabouts, she retaliated by attacking him physically and verbally, while simultaneously laughing and claiming she was exempt from reporting to him. Jordan got into an argument in front of Alexander's family and friends 2 months later, at his 18th birthday party. She assaulted a 15-year-old neighbor girl who had been invited to the party. She had just cooled down when she saw the girl was being overly kind to Alex, but her true nature was evident to everybody. After that, Alexander's siblings and parents pushed him to end his relationship with the violent Jordan. The man who had previously ignored them now listened and agreed that his chosen one had behaved too strongly. That next night, he had a conversation with her in which he informed her that he would be staying at his parents' home instead of returning to their apartment. Alex went back to school, but he kept working. By the time 2014 New Year's Eve rolled around, Jordan had mostly faded from his mind. She contacted him out of the blue to tell him she was expecting their first child in the spring. The man was taken aback and overjoyed to hear such news. After learning that the guy's parents were expecting a grandchild, the lady expressed her regrets and said that she had delayed informing him because she had assumed he would no longer be interested in seeing her. She consented and relocated to live with the Skeel family. 3 months after their marriage, she and Alexander welcomed a son, William, into the world. From the time they were small until about the middle of autumn 2014, the grandparents and parents were overjoyed. They coexisted peacefully. There was a brief moment when Jordan fell head over heels for the person I knew, cared deeply for her chosen one, and did all in her power to make him happy. The girl found out she was pregnant again when William was 6 months old. This is when she went into another episode of hysteria and capriciousness, demanding that Alexander and his family vacate his parents' home immediately. The man attributed their actions to their intense hormones, but he did agree to rent them a house in the city, and they relocated there shortly after. The happy parents welcomed a daughter into the world in the summer of 2015 and named her Alice. Despite Alexander's overwhelming joy, which she expressed by physically holding his wife and children in his arms, Jordan was able to persuade her beloved to remain by her side. Jordan once again banned her husband from communicating with his family after the move and refused to allow his parents to see their grandkids. Meanwhile, the lady dutifully took their financial aid and would even force Alex to approach his parents for funds on occasion. In the span of just a few months, she managed to control him entirely. She broke him emotionally and then seized complete control of his life. Jordan began abusing her husband on a regular basis. Eventually, she began beating him, although gently at first, as if to gauge his reaction to her growing realization that he would put up with her abuse and keep quiet, nor would she be harmed in any way. She let her viciousness run wild, exhibiting sadistic tendencies against him. Because of this, everything began when they started remodeling their home, and the lady was always unhappy with Alexander's choices. He casually said that pleasing her was an impossible task. Then a hammer slammed into his skull, inflicting a severe injury. As he collapsed to the ground, the confused man clutched his wound with his hand and almost passed out. As he begged his wife for assistance or summoned an ambulance, he could feel the blood trickling down his cheeks. She said passively, "Crawl away and die," before leaving the room to watch television in another room. Instead of seeing a doctor or telling anybody what happened, Alex self-treated the head injuries. For the rest of her life, Jordan felt her husband would never speak out against her or report her to the authorities, so she figured she could get away with anything. He ended up living through a relentless moral crisis for the subsequent 3 years. The physical anguish that Alexander endured. He was already so down in the dumps that he couldn't see the danger or even the presence of it. He kept working and doing his best to care for his family, but he was becoming more and more frustrated and unhappy with his wife, who was beating him daily and coming up with more complex forms of abuse. The use of the marital bed became an absolute no-go for the young guy. As an alternative, he was confined to the bedside mat, like a dog, without any kind of blanket or pillow. In addition to being barred from the kitchen, he was also limited to eating only the leftovers from his family's meals. Indeed, Alexander was going hungry as he was unable to purchase any goods from outside the home. The wife had found a new source of amusement for herself after Jordan stole all his money, so she kept her husband from getting any relaxation or sleep. She had a habit of slashing him, beating him on the head, or dousing him in hot water the moment he slept off. In retrospect, Alexander remembered that every time he woke up, the agony was intense and bloody, or set on fire. After that, he would gently put his wife to bed and attend to his wounds using whatever methods were at his disposal. What was occurring seemed like a normal occurrence to Alexander. He gave up trying to resist because his moral fiber had finally shattered. A man's communication with his family, his parents, brother, and wife, came to a halt. The young lady could not control her spending since she constantly begged them for money and helped support her own parents financially. By the end of his weight loss journey, Alexander had dropped below 50 pounds. Furthermore, he always had cuts, scrapes, burns, and hematomas all over his body, which made others wonder what was wrong with him. Fearing for his safety, his wife coerced him into leaving his job after co-workers encouraged him to visit the hospital. Jordan took him captive after his firing and began abusing him constantly. Everyone around the couple continued to believe they were a happy family, even though the couple's house was a horrific place. Jordan took care of her husband's social media accounts, where she often shared vintage images of the couple and their kids with heartfelt notes about their love and gratitude for fate's hand in their union. Little did anybody suspect that this seemingly perfect mother of two could secretly transform into a complex monster. He had chronic burns and a lengthy, deep wound on his arm. Additionally, he was unable to visit the hospital due to his lack of funds, so he had to make do with food-rapid tape to treat his injuries at home. Occasionally, neighbors would hear what sounded like screams emanating from the couple's home. On occasion, these cries would be so upsetting that worried individuals would contact the authorities. Every time, however, Jordan was able to persuade the authorities that she and her husband were perfectly well, and they were sent packing. One of the cops on the second squad that the residents had requested saw a guy with blood streaming down his arm and a new wound that he was gripping. There were injuries of varied severity all over his face, and he seemed macerated. Despite the girl's best efforts to persuade the officer that her mentally disturbed husband sometimes committed suicide by cutting himself, the cops instead contacted the paramedics and transferred Alex to the hospital. When the young guy was admitted, the physicians were startled to see his condition. His arm was in such terrible shape that amputation was a real possibility, and he had almost no vital signs remaining. Second and third-degree burns covered Alexander's torso. He was a mere 94 pounds, not to mention the several hematomas, knocked-out teeth, and a serious cut on his forearm, not to mention the screwdriver strikes that destroyed his shoulder ligaments. Suddenly, Jordan stormed inside the medical facility, proclaiming her right to have her spouse returned to her while simultaneously reassuring everyone that he was unharmed and responsible for his own misfortune. Nevertheless, the sad lady was not believed, so she was taken to the police to be interrogated. Jordan initially maintained her denials and the story her husband had told her, cutting oneself. However, the lady altered her expression and started to recount in great detail all that she had done to her husband as Alexander's parents arrived at the station after seeing their son in the hospital. He was obedient and couldn't escape her, she said, since she had taught him like a dog. Meanwhile, Jordan maintained that her husband was the one who instigated the violent incident. She persisted in claiming he was mentally ill and prone to self-injury since he was reportedly unfaithful. The man's parents naturally denied all of these claims, but he waited to decide to testify against his wife until after he had sought therapy. The story gets more enticing. For all of my true crime fans, make sure to give a subscribe, like and comment on what case you would like to see next. Did Alexander muster the courage to discuss the recent tragedies that had occurred in his own family while collaborating with the psychologist? There would be no more than an administrative punishment, however, according to Jordan. Concerned about the impending trial, she felt rather uneasy. The court, however, determined that the defendant was guilty. She was sentenced to 7.5 years in jail after being found guilty of coercive control, moral and physical assault, and purposeful inflicting of serious bodily damage. For the sadist, not even the presence of 2 little children could excuse his actions. This was an exceptional case for the UK, and the punishment surprised Jordan even more. During their mother's sentencing, the children were placed in the care of their grandparents and father. After Alexander overcame his years of agony, he began volunteering and is now an advocate for others who have survived domestic abuse. By July 4, 2023, Jordan will have served 5 of her 7.5 years, but was freed on parole. Still, it's against the rules for the lady to see her ex-husband or any of their children. The conviction and incarceration of Jordan brought some solace, but Alexander still had a long road to rehabilitation ahead of him. It required long-term treatment to help him heal from the profound psychological effects of his abuse and return to a normal life. He found comfort and meaning in assisting others who had experienced such tragedies. As he began to recover, he got actively involved in helping others and speaking out for victims of domestic abuse. In an effort to help people who are still victims of violent relationships, he often gave speeches at which he shared his tale. The kids, meanwhile, adjusted to living with their dad and grandparents. They overcame the hardships of childhood thanks to the support and affection of their family. Alexander ensured that they could get therapy in order to go with what had happened to them. Also made sure they were loved and protected. Reactions to Jordan's parole release were varied. Some believed her punishment was too little considering the severity of her brutality, while others were glad she had done her time. A severe restraining order barring her from communicating with Alexander was a condition of her release, in order to ensure the future of their own children. Regardless, Alexander never let her off the hook, worrying that she may endanger everyone if she ever broke her parole. It seemed like things had changed for Jordan once she got out of jail. Apparently trying to start a new chapter in her life, she was engaged to Adam and rumors circulated that she was pregnant again. Authorities closely watched her contacts with her new family and made sure she complied with all legal limits out of worry for her capacity to parent, given her prior conduct. Reclaiming his life was only the beginning of what Alexander's bravery and perseverance would do for society at large, giving comfort and encouragement to the many others who are silently suffering. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.